The trip of California continues. We've made our way to Scott's house. Scott, thank you so much for having me. Another beautiful reef tank. I'm letting you guys know, Cali has some insane heat when it comes to reef tanks. I'm letting the East Coast know, you guys got to start showcasing some better tanks because these things are crazy. Let's get right into this tank. Scott, how big is the tank and what are the dimensions we're dealing with?
Okay, so we have a 7 feet long, 24 front to back and 30 tall. It's about 265 gallons. And then I got about a 60-gallon sump underneath.
And then how old is this tank now at this point?
So I've had this tank for about 8 years now. It was a fish only with live rock for the first 4, and then I got brave enough to buy a few corals. This is the first piece right here that was one head of one little, was it rastazoa, and it's now grown into a whole rock piece. So it's kind of exciting to see how things have changed over the last 4 years.
For sure, the transition's really cool to see too. You said, it was fish only with live rock. If you look at the tank now, I don't think anyone would believe you if you said that I started out as a fish only. I was doing eels and all those things, like you said, doing the predator style. What made you really want to make that switch? You were just doing the fish only. What made you kind of all of a sudden say, hey, I want to get some corals in there. I want to do some more reef safe fish, some more community fish. What made you make that change?
Yeah, when I had the fish only with live rock, I had crosshatch triggers, I had every fairy wrasse and all these cool things, and I was so excited about it, but there was something that was always empty inside, that I wasn't like a real hobbyist or a real reefer until I had some corals. And I definitely didn't do well on the front end, and managing my nitrates and phosphates was something that I didn't really understand, and I was just doing water changes. But over time I've learned a lot about the hobby, and seeing where it's at today, I'm like super proud of it.
For sure. You said off camera earlier that you originally started out as a fish person first, right? And then you kind of transitioned into the coral. Let's talk about your fish selection. Right off the start, if you guys haven't noticed, Scott has an amazing selection of tanks all grouped together. How are you keeping everybody happy and going inside this tank, with such a wide group of fish and such a big group of surgeonfish, tanks in general?
Yeah, I'd say the big thing is just feeding. I pound this place with nori, pellets, mysis, and just keep them fed constantly. And but I really switched to reef nutrition. And
Okay.
I found that stuff has been way better just from a quality product. Like the fish is all fattened up. Everyone seems to really like it. And it hasn't really messed with my nitrates and phosphates too much. It's been a good food that I've switched to.
Are you doing any food specifically for the corals, or are you allowing the fish to be the food?
Yeah, so what I've been doing is basically I have a Benepets, and I also do Reefroids. And so I have one of the Trident NPs that I closely monitor every day. And like if my phosphates get above 1, then I kind of go back to the Benepets. And if it's like, lower than a 0.1, then I'm feeding Reefroids. So just kind of like mix it up based on what my water parameters are. With all the corals and all of the, the biological load that I have in here, everything just kind of like manages itself. I wouldn't be able to do this if this was a 1-year-old tank. Being that it's been around for 8 years and it's cycled and everything's healthy, I actually have to dose nitrates and phosphates sometimes too if I'm not here to feed.
I know everybody's been wanting us to talk about them. They're the star of the show when it comes to this system. Let's talk about your corals. You've got a wide selection in this tank. You got a mixture of, you've got some softies here. You've got LPS mixed in as well. Some huge colonies of LPS, honestly, but you've got an amazing collection of SPS. You also have what I think is really cool. Instead of utilizing the GSP on the back wall, you went with Monty on the back wall. Talk a little bit about why you decided to go with some Monty. I also see what looks like maybe an acro or some SPS mounted on the back wall too.
Yeah.
Kevin talked a little bit about some of the plating acros. Really enjoy when you get to mount them on that sidewall. They can really create such a cool structure. But let's talk about the corals, how you decided to go with what is now almost a truly SPS dominated system.
Yeah, of course. So, you can't really frag a fish, but you can frag an acro pretty easy. So I got into that real quickly. This one piece that we have in the back over here, this big Montipora, was literally this big. And I've literally broken pieces off of it as it's fallen off because it gets too heavy on the back wall, and put it all around the tank. And every one of the neighbors who has a reef tank has at least half a dozen of these too, because I've been trying to get rid of it. I don't know if I'd advise it for my big tank that we're doing. It's going to be a maintenance nightmare, but it's been a really cool addition to have that across the back wall. And I've found that most people think that's unique to this tank.
For sure. You talked about it too when we first walked in. You've got a nice rack of some TSA pieces.
Yeah.
What pieces did you pick up from us? And they look nice. They seem to be encrusting and doing super well in this tank.
Yeah, I think we have a BK Chem, we have a Unity, we got a Walt Disney, we got a Haymaker, And there's a few other ones that I'm not like the best reefer that I probably found on discount that day, you know?
I'll be honest too. I even work at Top Shelf, and the amount of names we have on all the corals, sometimes it's tough for everyone to remember those, right? But amazing pieces. What ended up making you decide to kind of strive towards the SPS? Was it always an ultimate goal for the challenge, the color? Did you like SPS originally, or were you kind of leaning into maybe the flowy corals originally?
Sure.
Did you kind of transition at any point?
Yeah, so when I first started in the hobby, I was really into rainbow acans. I just wanted rainbow acans everywhere, and I have a couple of them that are still in the tank to this day, but you know, they didn't really do too much for me. They were kind of slow growing, and like the color they were and what they were when I bought them was the same, but seeing a little frag, little stick acro and seeing what it could be, and just getting into that point where I was like, there's basically unlimited growth, you know, and you can put them all over the tank and they're beautiful. And I do a lot of diving, like just to see like a natural reef. In your mind, you don't think acan, you think like, you know, Acropora, SPS, you know, that's what I've seen like when I've gone on trips. And that's just like, I put my head in the tank with my snorkel on, you know, after a few years, so you're probably not gonna put that in the video. But,
I think I should.
Yeah, but you know, everybody has their own way of doing it, and like I just, you know, when you turn the blue lights on, you get your little orange goggles, and you really nerd out. Like it's just a real sight to see. It's cool.
It is. Yeah. It's something to enjoy and sit back and relish on. You know, you obviously had a team come in and help you set up the tank, but you are taking the, you know, the time and dedication to master the craft and create a beautiful reef tank, and the proof is in the pudding. Let's talk about some of the equipment in the tank. I see a bunch of flow in here.
Yeah.
Obviously directly behind you got the Apex setup.
Yep.
We've got the new Trident NP, the Trident, all kinds of different stuff. Let's go over our equipment. We can also talk about this setup right here behind us too.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention to everyone watching at home, very unique aspect of what's going on with the tank, right? So this is a unbelievable reef tank.
Yeah.
But it's the only thing in the house. There's nothing else in here because you're getting ready to move, right? And you have the new tank talk coming up. Yeah. Let's talk about that first
This is
real
great.
quick.
So everyone can understand this. I have a wife and I have a 6-month-old baby, and we lasted here for about 4 months.
Yeah.
So last month we bought a house. Maybe,
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you for that. But you know, it's funny. I've been here as a bachelor for 10 years, and I've always had my tank, and everyone knows about the tank. And where I live, I leave the blinds open, and everyone comes by and checks it out at night. So, you know, it's weird not being here. And we were talking earlier about how the fish don't recognize me anymore. So when I come in, I have to be really slow and gentle, otherwise they'll all go hide from me. So they get cagey when they're not seeing people every day, which is kind of a unique thing.
Such a crazy thing for everybody watching at home. You look at the tank, it is unbelievable. And for me, it's almost sad knowing that this is going to get shut down. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel because it's only going to get bigger and better in the end. Let's talk about that new project. How big is it? You know, you've got a fish room on the side. Let's just talk about the main tank though.
Sure.
How big is that new tank going to be?
It's going to be 850 gallons. It's 10 feet long, 4 feet tall, and 3 feet front to back. And the 4 feet's going to be interesting.
You can swim in that basically.
Yeah, no, we're joking that our first snorkeling experience for our daughter will be in the tank.
In the tank, I love that. Let's get back to the equipment now.
Sure.
We'll talk about what's the heart of the tank.
Sure.
You've got an Apex on there, correct? Is that the main heart of the system?
Yeah, I run everything off the Apex, very happy with it. You know, I've had people tell me I should switch, but I've never had any issues with it, so I think it's a good system. I'm very religious about checking water parameters, so the regular Trident and the NP have been really helpful for me because I love to feed. You know, everyone wants to feed their fish and make them happy, and you can see when you overfeed and get a high phosphate or nitrate reading that maybe you should cool it, you know, and sometimes you have to put no-pox in or a little lanthanum or something if you're being bad. But, you know, having that backstop me as a hobbyist has made all the difference in the world. Like not having to manually do a water test, you know, and then finding out a week later that you did something a week ago, you get ahead of a lot of your problems.
It's crazy how automated reef tanks have become over the course of time. Like you said, this tank has been up for 10 plus years or so now. The hobby's changed so much in that time period. I'm sure it's seen an array of equipment that's come through and changed in and out of the tank. Let's talk about some of the flow in the tank. You've got NPs, I see some AIs, and then you also have some gyres too. You've got a lot of different flow.
Let's talk about that.
With all the SPS, I'm sure you need a lot of it.
Yeah, exactly. So the cool thing is, these are MP40s I bought 8 years ago for the fish only tank, and they're still running.
Wow,
so
crazy.
The original ones, I've had to change the wet sides twice, but
Good testament to Ecotech.
Yeah, good job there. These XF350s do a really good job kind of disturbing this top water flow. I like them a lot. And then these Neros are perfect because they don't have the whole pump assemblies inside the water. So you don't have that MP that you need to stick on the back. You can put these wherever you want throughout the course of the tank, and you can just put the tank up against the wall. The new tank that's 850 gallons has an 1.5 inch thick acrylic on the back, so no magnet's gonna work for that. My hope and goal is to maybe glue the inside magnet to the tank and try and work it that way so we can get some more flow.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so.
And then down in the sump, what equipment are we running down
Sure.
in the sump? I saw a skimmer, a couple skimmers, and then what else are we running
Yeah,
down
so these
there?
are the old school, Aquamax Q6s. This is like back in the Marine Depot days.
If it isn't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah, and this first one works a little bit better, and they always say that skimmers kind of compete when you have two of them, so I kind of let this one do its thing, and I like a little redundancy. I could probably just run one, but better be safe than sorry, especially with the fish load that I have
I was about to say large fish load, so not a bad idea to have the redundancy on a tank. I'll be honest, your sump is crazy clean. You have a super clean sump. A lot of the time, I open up the stand or anywhere down below, and we're on these tank tours. A lot of people are like, hey, don't judge me for the detritus and everything underneath.
Yeah.
You got a crazy clean sump. Are you pretty religious about keeping it clean down there?
Not at all. I just did it a week ago for this video. My hands are all cut up from doing it. So if you want to see what it really looked like, look at the skimmer bodies right there. The entire wall of that looked like that, but for the video, it looks nice and perfect for
well,
you
we
guys.
appreciate you
Out in
cleaning
TV
it up.
land.
That's all for you guys. This thing is nice and cleaned up. So you got the skimmers. Anything else? You're not running any filter socks here?
No.
Is it just direct flow right down?
I used to run filter socks, and I had to change them so often, and the way they set this up was a little bit tricky, so it's just kind of a maintenance nightmare. So I come in and I'll shop back out the bottom here and there when I have leftover stuff, but I got a UV sterilizer, which that's something I wanted to talk about. They set that up originally straight within the flow of the tank. And what's really important with the UV and keeping all these fish, especially tangs like Achilles and all these other ones that are prone to ick, you really have to dial in the flow for UV sterilizer. Like I had this issue with ick and all these other things, because when I was first in the hobby, I didn't do a good job quarantine things like I do now. But when I dialed in the flow to a lower flow that's proper for that UV, I've had no issues with any ick, parasites, anything for several years now.
Yeah, it's impressive to hear that too with, like you said, such a sheer size and group of fish. And there's a couple of tangs in here that a lot of people call ick magnets, right?
Yeah,
that Achilles, the powder blue. And I have to say that powder blue is truly gorgeous.
Yeah.
Right behind you too, you've got a big water station.
Yeah, sure.
This is obviously your auto top off here on the right.
Yeah.
And then on the left, this is some water that's currently being mixed and ready to go for automatic water changes.
Yeah, so when I was doing automatic water changes, I had this. This is how much water I had to use to go in and shop back out all the junk that I was telling you guys about there.
Holy,
so
yeah.
I went through and
a decent water change then you ended up doing on the tank.
Yeah, like 20 gallons on the tank right there. But, for the most part, this thing will stay full for almost a month. So like if I wanted to, I could be gone for 30 days and have no problem with the tank and just maybe have Rick and his guys come check it out here and there if I needed to.
Truly automated, yeah. Giving all of your animals the chance that, if you don't have the time or, if you need to be out of town, they're gonna be set up for a long period for sure.
Yeah.
You said you have the Versas that you're using for dosing pumps. You have another dosing pump up top.
Yep.
Any other equipment you wanted to mention before we got
this is actually a big one. So I had a big issue when we lived in this place. So this is funny. Everyone talks about not wanting to see big tanks in people's mansions. This is a 900 square foot apartment. So I'm a man of the people. When we were in here and we had people over, if there was too many people in the house, my CO2 levels would spike through the roof and my pH would drop.
Gotcha.
So I had to start running calc when I had all these people in here to keep up with my pH.
Right.
It was the funniest thing because I could literally see, based on who was there, including my golden retriever, what was going on because the pH was going up and down. But I religiously run calc off this Vast Marine mix, this unit, and I'll probably be running that on the new tank. But that's really helped, buffer all of my, alkalinity, calcium, everything.
So big supporter of utilizing calc-wasser in a tank.
Yeah.
We use it a ton at Top Shelf. I mean, we go through gallons and gallons a day of calc-wasser. So was there a point when you decided I want to swap to calc-wasser, or have you kind of used it for a long period?
I'll tell you guys about that too. So I was running CO2 scrubbers into my skimmer for the longest time, and changing that media and doing that was just a nightmare.
Were you recirculating it, or was it just straight scrubbing it?
I was recirculating it. And
Even then, you kind of still blow through media.
Yeah, I was blowing through media, and it was just not the right thing to be doing. And then when I set this up, it was a game changer for me. And then I was running at one point 300 mils of alkalinity and calcium in 2-part a day just for the tank, and now it's maybe like 100, so it's not too bad. But like that would have got real expensive if I didn't switch to cal.
For sure.
Yeah.
Saw the chiller too on the ground.
Yep.
The Arctica, the JBJ, correct?
Yeah, the thing's been around for 8 years too.
I was gonna say those are kind of solid. I've had one that's lasted a really long time. Are you running that 24/7, kind of just on to maintain, make sure the temperature stays within a certain range?
Mini splits in here, and we live at the beach, so it's not too hot on most days. But like sometimes in the summer, this thing will run a little bit. And like if I don't run this fan, or if I I have 7 radions on top of this, we can get into talking about that. It can get pretty warm in here. So yeah, running that chiller has definitely helped out quite a bit. I got battery backup systems for the pumps, which should always make sure you test those every couple of years, because I had one go bad once, and that was not good when we had a power outage. So
yeah, for sure.
I keep extra batteries and a generator in the house too.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm like really religious about safety precaution and keeping all these animals alive.
Staying on that same kind of topic, maintenance. You said you did water changes before on this tank. You were into that, and you've recently switched over to the Moonshiner method on this system. Let's talk about why you decided to go with the Moonshiner method, how it's working for you, and what your plans are with the future tank.
Sure. So originally I was doing 5-gallon water changes on a daily basis, and it worked pretty well for me. And it was just one of those things where I just got tired of mixing salt, and I had a buddy tell me that I needed to switch over to the Moonshine method, and I just at that point started doing ICP tests. And once I was getting those results back, and I was doing my ICPs every 2 months, once everything started getting balanced, I didn't really need to do the water changes anymore. It just seemed like a waste. I still have like a full automatic water changing setup here, and auto top off, and I can use it anytime I need to. I was running it off the Versas that I have here, but for the most part, when I've been manually dosing my traces and keeping up with certain things to get depleted, like fluorine, boron, bromine, things that really get pulled out of my tank, as long as I've been adding those, I haven't really seen a need for a water change.
It's unique, everyone reefs a different way, and it's cool to see, some people are just like, hey, I'll do some water changes, and the trace elements will just kind of find the way. Whereas you're taking that time, you're dedicating, doing the ICP tests, checking those trace elements, and then trying to replenish them. At Top Shelf, we're really big into doing our ICPs. We've got a lot of water, we've got a lot of corals we have to take care of, and I would say it's a testament to what you're doing for your tank. I mean, you taking the time to really focus in on those exact numbers and levels they're looking for. I mean, the tank looks amazing, honestly.
Yeah, no, everything I do in this tank is all run off those ICP tests. I had really good growth, what I thought was good growth over the first 3 years I was running the tank. And as soon as you start doing Moonshine, ICP, and getting all that trace elements stuff dialed, like it just completely exploded. As you can see, like everything's touching each other. We got coral warfare going on right here. I need that 850-gallon tank. At least that's what I tell my wife. I need the tank, right?
You need it.
Yeah, she's not here yet, so we're still good. We can talk about that. It's only 600 gallons if she asks. But for the most part, like adding all those traces just got crazy polyp extension, just healthy corals. Like I haven't had anything, no die-off, no nothing. It's just been so good ever since I changed.
Talked about this a couple times. I've seen it with several of the tanks that I've seen here in California. As these tanks have developed, they're bigger. I see a lot of the fish having the chance to kind of act natural, be in bigger groups. Having a larger group of fish is more possible. Obviously, with a bigger tank, that's what you need. But seeing a more well-developed reef, you kind of see them act more natural. Crazy to see a group of gem tangs, a group of blue hippos. You have some interesting groups of these tanks. You also have a beautiful Achilles. Let's talk about some of the other fish in the tank. I see some Anthias. I saw some Chromis too. Do you have some worker fish? I saw a filefish swimming around in there, a mystery wrasse I just saw in the back corner. Let's talk about some of the other fish outside of the tangs we have.
Yeah, so most of all the wrasses are worker fish in here. I have a lot of nuisance things that they're working on cleaning all the time. Mostly like bristle worms. They're like everywhere. I know they're not too bad, but if you pull up any one of these things, all these wrasses are so fat from eating all those. All the Anthias in here are kind of more ornamental. We're working on a bigger tank that we'll talk about later, but right now most of it's like the Anthias, and then you got some chromies that are kind of working in there, but all these wrasses and whatnot do most of the work for me. I don't really have a whole lot of crabs or anything in the tank if you guys look.
Talked about some of the equipment in the tank. Let's talk about what's lighting up the system and helping all these corals grow. Let's get into your lighting.
Sure. So I have 7 radions on the tank right now. I have 2 Gen 4s, 3 Gen 5s, and 2 Gen 6s, so it's kind of a mixed bag. They all work together great on Mobius. Mobius is a wonderful app. It's so easy to use, and I'm very happy with it. But Yeah, there's so much light that I have on this tank. I have a par meter that I use. Even at the bottom right here, I'm like at 100, and up at the top, it's close to 450. So you can see even some of these guys are getting a little bit too much. So, you know, we're gonna have a 4-foot tall tank. So hopefully that'll, you know, all be working itself out. We're gonna change out the lenses though and use those high output lenses that you can put on there. I think it's like a $20 fix. You can change the lens.
We are starting to make that swap too in the farm, because we're seeing that the ability to run a lower intensity while still getting that punch is really good for us, because we're running 100 plus radions, right? For us, the bill, it could come down a little bit, having that chance to kind of run that punch a little bit lower. And also it kind of brings it back to that spread that the Gen 4 was originally, that everyone loved and raved about. So pretty cool to see those lens kits that everyone's kind of wanting to try out. Mentioned the Moonshiners. Let's get into the Moonshiners a little bit more. Talk to you.
Can we go over to it?
Sure, we can talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, so I've been doing the moonshine method for, you know, on and off nine months now, more or less. And I would say dosing all those individual trace elements, I can see the pulp extension the next day, like, or within a couple hours on how happy things look and what's going on. And I'm always depleting a lot of manganese with the Ghanies love that stuff. And then you got like iron's a big one that I'm adding, cobalt. I can go through it. There's vanadium.
Crazy, right? You would never think you're adding in iron to a tank, cobalt to a tank. I think that's always interesting for a lot of people at home that don't get into the Reef Moonshiners or know that much. They're like, why would I want to add an iron into my system? Why am I doing that from the start? Yeah,
this is the one thing I wanted to tell everybody that was like important to me is I was really nervous about starting the moonshine method, not being like an expert reefer. You know, like all of this has been great and I've had my ups and downs, but the moonshining method is much easier than you think. It's really just being able to go in and send an ICP test, plug all of that data into an Excel sheet, and it spits out what you're supposed to do. And as long as you're like, you know, somewhat diligent with your maintenance, if you miss a day, you can just double dose it the next day. It's really not as hard, and I'd really advocate for it because that's been the difference for me, not even doing water changes now and having all my parameters be stable. The tank's just taken off.
Two things I've noticed from the two tanks that I've actually done tank tours with that are running Reef Moonshiners method, yours and Ian's, is a couple things. One, the color and how the growth is extremely impressive. They are really, really nice. The other thing is, you guys are actively doing the dosing, right? You're doing that dosing. I kind of like that in a way because you get to be in tune with your tank. You're coming up, you're getting involved with your system, you're being hands-on directly with it. We've talked about it in a couple videos this weekend, honestly, and it's something I kind of want more people to understand. I think everyone needs to be a little bit more in tune with their reef tanks, right? Be involved with your reef. I know automating it, making it easy, that's part of it, right? We want to make this as simple and easy as we can, but also don't, you know, disconnect yourself from your reef tank.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. I had everything automated at one point, but when I kind of took it over, and I've had maintenance guys help me out, like Rick's people help me when I'm not here and whatnot, but if you're not the one maintaining your tank, it's never gonna thrive. No matter how good your guy is or how often he's here, if you don't care about it, you aren't doing the work yourself, you'll never see the results that you want. You know,
we're talking
this, you know.
Absolutely. It's, once again, proof is in the pudding. We just mentioned a tip right there. Jake Adams, he did it every single tank tour when he'd come in. I love asking every single reefer because we've said it earlier too. Everyone reefs a different way, which is really cool. You don't do the water changes, but you're getting the success, right? We just visited a tank. They did water changes. They're having success. What's a tip you would tell someone getting into the reef hobby or getting ready to start out? Maybe your tip is start with a predator tank and then you'll end up with an awesome reef tank. Is that the tip?
No, I'd say the tip is get what you like. Don't buy a coral because it's $500 and you can frag it and make money off it. Buy what you like. I like day cans. I kind of grew out of it. I still have some, but do what makes you happy and, you know, take your time with it because you don't want to have major die off and major things happen, and do it because you love it. I'm a fisherman, diver, you know, I love the ocean, and the most joyous thing I have besides seeing my wife and my new baby is coming home to the tank. So if you don't have that feeling about your tank, you'll never make it, you know?
For sure.
So
and
you'll love it, you know?
They're connected to us like family, right? Just like our dogs are. That's the way we treat our fish, right? We nerd out with this stuff. We love it so much. Scott, thank you so much for letting us come into your house. Your tank is unbelievable. I have to say though, I've got to make a trip back once you get that new tank set up because I'm definitely going to want to see the upgrade and all of that. I really had a lot of fun today checking out this system. If you guys have any questions for Scott, if you have anything you wanted to talk about his tank, be sure to drop it down in the comments below. If you guys have hung out all the way till the end, I want to say thank you so much. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on any future uploads.